When I was just 12 years old, my world was turned upside down. I lost my mom to breast cancer, and it left me and my dad to navigate the aftermath alone. It was an incredibly difficult time, as we were all each other had. But somehow, despite the grief and pain, we managed to get through it together. We leaned on each other for support, figuring out how to move forward without the one person we both relied on the most. 2 years later, when I was 14, my dad remarried. He had met and fallen in love with a woman named Ashley. She seemed nice enough, and I was hopeful that things might get better. Along with Ashley came her 2 kids, Mark, who was also 14, and Emily, who was 12. I was trying my best to adjust to this new family dynamic. I got along well with Ashley, and I really liked Emily. She was sweet and easy to be around. But Mark, well, things were different with him. We didn't get along from the start. Mark and I were constantly at odds. Every day felt like a new argument or fight waiting to happen. My dad always seemed to be on his side, though. He would tell me to give Mark a break because he had been the man of the house before Ashley met my dad. Apparently, this whole situation was as new and difficult for him as it was for me. But I couldn't help feeling like my dad was asking me to bend over backward while Mark got a free pass. After all, my life had been turned upside down too, and no one was cutting me any slack. When I turned 15, I started dating a girl from school named Lisa. It was the kind of relationship you have when you're a teenager, innocent and sweet, but nothing serious. Still, it felt like a big deal to me. Unbeknownst to me, Mark had a crush on her too. When he found out that I had asked her out, he lost it. He started a fight over it, and once again, my dad had to step in and break it up. And as usual, I ended up being blamed for the entire thing. Things took a turn for the worse shortly after my 16th birthday. My stepmom, Ashley, was putting away my laundry one day when she suddenly started screaming at the top of her lungs. It was so loud and panicked that we all ran to my room, thinking something terrible had happened. My girlfriend Lisa was over at the time, and we rushed in together, not knowing what to expect. When we got to my room, my stepmom was standing there, holding several pairs of Emily's underwear in her hands. She was screaming at me, demanding to know why they were in my drawer. I was completely stunned. I had never seen them before in my life, but it didn't matter. No one believed me. I tried to explain, but my words fell on deaf ears. No matter how much I protested, they were convinced I had done something terrible. Then Mark stepped in and made it even worse. He started telling everyone that he had caught me staring at his sister on multiple occasions and that I had acted creepy around her. He even went as far as to claim that I had once said I wanted to marry her. None of it was true, but his lies were all it took to seal my fate. Lisa, who had been standing there through all of this, slapped me across the face, called me a pervert, and stormed out. Our relationship was over in an instant. My dad, furious, grabbed me by the arm and physically threw me out of the house. He was yelling that he wasn't going to risk his daughter's safety by letting a pervert stay under his roof. He didn't use those exact words, but it was clear what he meant. I was in complete shock. I begged them to believe me, to listen to me, but no one cared. I found myself standing outside, pleading to be let back in. I pounded on the door, crying, trying to make them understand that Mark was lying. But my dad didn't want to hear it. He opened the door just long enough to shove me down onto the ground and told me to get lost. When I said I had nowhere to go, he coldly replied that it wasn't his problem, then slammed the door and locked it behind him. In that moment, I became homeless. I had no place to go, no family who would take me in. I tried calling my dad's parents, hoping they would help, but he had already called them and told them what happened. They refused to offer me any support, believing I was guilty of the things Mark accused me of. My mom's parents had passed away before I was born, so I had no one else to turn to. I was 16 years old and living on the streets. For 2 years, I struggled to survive. I did things no kid should ever have to do just to get by. It was the darkest time in my life, and even now, it's hard to talk about what I went through. It took years of therapy to come to terms with the things I did and saw during those 2 years. When I turned 18, I finally caught a break. I got a job working at a boxing gym. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a sense of stability for the first time in years. I stayed far away from the town where my life had fallen apart and focused on rebuilding myself. Boxing became an outlet for all the anger and hate I had pent up inside me. I wasn't going to become a champion, but I got good at it. It helped me deal with everything I had been carrying for so long. At 35, my life took another turn. I met a woman in a cafe near the gym. She was 20 years old, and despite the age gap, we hit it off instantly. I'm not someone who believes in soulmates or fate, but if those things exist, she was mine. We started dating, and 2 years later, we got married. Her father was an electrician and gave me a job working for him. I think he did it to make sure I could provide for his daughter and maybe to keep an eye on me. I never questioned it, though. I understood where he was coming from. Now, 15 years later, we're still married and have 4 beautiful daughters. Thanks to my wife's encouragement, I earned my master's license as an electrician, and I'm in a much better place than I ever could have imagined. She's been my rock through everything, the one person who has supported me unconditionally. I owe so much of my happiness and success to her. Just this past weekend, something I never expected happened. I received an email from my stepsister, Emily. I have no idea how she found my email address, but it's not like I've been hiding. I'm 53 years old now, and it's been over 30 years since I heard from any of them. The email was long, but the main point was this. They now know the truth about what happened all those years ago. Apparently, Mark had been out drinking with some friends and got a little too comfortable. At some point, my name came up in conversation, and Mark started bragging about how he had set me up. He confessed to planting Emily's underwear in my drawer and lying about everything to get me kicked out. He even laughed about how he had taken my girlfriend Lisa from me. They all found it hilarious, and they joked about hoping I had died on the streets. But Mark didn't realize that Lisa was there. She overheard everything and was horrified. She called Emily to tell her the truth, and that's what prompted Emily to reach out to me. She spent the weekend trying to track me down and sent me this email, apologizing for everything that happened. She said they wanted to meet face to face to apologize and make up for lost time. Honestly, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't have any ill will toward Emily. She was just a kid at the time, and she didn't have much control over the situation. But I've spent years in therapy working through the anger and pain, and I've built a wonderful life with my wife and kids. I don't feel like I need anything from them anymore. I've moved on. My wife thinks I should at least respond, maybe with a snarky comment like, "Thanks for finally believing me. It only took 30 years. She has a petty streak, which I love about her, but I'm not sure. Part of me just wants to delete the email and continue living my life as if nothing happened. There's a quote I keep in my house. To see a man beaten not by a better man, but by himself is a tragedy. It's a daily reminder of how far I've come. I read the email and deleted it, choosing to move on with my life. I reminded myself of an important question. Do I really want to spend more of my time and emotional energy on these people? Deep down, I knew the answer was no. I had already spent enough of my life weighed down by their actions. Part of me just wanted to leave it all behind, but then there was my wife. Her response was different, blunt and a bit petty, but in its own way, it spoke the truth. She had always been more straightforward about things like this, helping me see situations clearly when I was struggling to find my own way. 2 days later, I felt it was time to provide an update. First and foremost, I wanted to thank everyone who reached out with words of kindness and support. To be honest, I wasn't seeking advice. I just needed a space to share my story, but the encouragement and insight from others were deeply appreciated. So many people gave me credit for overcoming everything I had been through, and while I was grateful for their praise, the truth is that much of that credit belongs to my wife. She has been my rock, standing by me through it all, and if I've made it this far, a huge part of that is because of her. For those who doubted the authenticity of my story, I get it. It's Reddit. People are naturally skeptical, and that's okay. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I shared my experience because it felt important. And if it helps even one person realize they can survive and find peace, then I've done what I set out to do. Whether others believe me or not doesn't change the fact that sharing my story has meaning for me. Now, for the update that many of you have been asking for, I'm going to post a majority of the original email as requested. There are a few deeply personal details I've chosen to leave out, but for the most part, everything is intact. I may need to break it up due to the character limits, but I'll do my best to include everything. I should also mention that when I wrote my response to Emily, I didn't do it alone. My wife helped me, and I also got some suggestions from others. I've never been particularly great at expressing my feelings in writing without coming across poorly, but with their help, I was able to convey my thoughts in a way that felt true to what I was feeling. My wife, in particular, helped me sound far more articulate than I would have been on my own. Looking back, I realize how much I owed her support during this process. Last weekend, I took my family to the lake for a brief getaway. We needed to recharge, to leave all the emotional turmoil behind us for a while. The fresh air, the quiet moments by the water, and the time spent with my loved ones were exactly what I needed. It gave me the clarity to process everything that had happened without feeling overwhelmed. The email from my sister Emily was both unexpected and emotional. She began by acknowledging that it had been far too long since she had reached out. She expressed her understanding if I chose not to read her message, but she hoped I would at least give her the chance to explain. Emily apologized for the years of silence, for never contacting me sooner, and explained how she had been misled. According to her, both Mark and our father had spent years filling her head with lies, painting a negative picture of me until she believed I was someone I wasn't. She admitted that for a while. She held on to the hope that I would come back, but as time passed and the lies continued to poison her thoughts, she let go of that hope and began to view me with suspicion and resentment. What hurt the most, she said, was that she started to hate me, even though she had always thought of me as a brother. The betrayal she felt from the twisted image of me that had been presented by Mark and Dad made her believe the worst about me. She deeply regretted not reaching out to hear my side of the story sooner. In the years since I left, much had changed. Emily had gotten married, and I was now an uncle, something I hadn't known until that moment. Our parents were still together, preparing for retirement, and Mark had married Lisa, though they hadn't had children. But all of that paled in comparison to what Emily revealed next. Recently, the truth came out in a way that turned her world upside down. On a Friday night, Lisa overheard Mark talking to his friends while they were drunk. Mark was boasting about how he had orchestrated the entire situation that led to me being ostracized by the family. He laughed about how he had manipulated everyone, making me look like the villain, and enjoyed the fact that everyone had turned against me. As he recounted the story, his friends joined in, mocking me and even making cruel remarks, saying they hoped I would die on the streets. Lisa was horrified by what she heard and confided in Emily. When Emily learned the truth, she felt like her entire understanding of the past had been ripped apart. She was devastated by how wrong she had been about me for all those years. She went on to say that she and Lisa were both deeply sorry for the role they played in believing the lies. After sharing what they had learned with our parents, Emily described how our father broke down in tears, something she had never seen before. It was as if all the guilt he had been carrying finally overwhelmed him. They spent hours talking, and in the end, the family decided they needed to find me and make amends. Emily had spent hours trying to locate me, hoping that she could reach out and extend a heartfelt apology for the years of misunderstanding, mistreatment, and hurt. She knew that no words could undo the damage that had been done, but hoped that I could find it in my heart to forgive them. She expressed a deep longing to start over, to make up for lost time, and asked that I consider meeting with them in person someday. She wanted the chance to apologize face to face, to try to heal the wounds they had caused, and to make amends for the past. When I read her letter, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sorrow, even a fleeting sense of relief that the truth had finally come out. But those feelings didn't erase the pain I had lived with for so long. My response to Emily was honest, though I knew it wouldn't be what she wanted to hear. I told her that while I appreciate her taking the time to write to me and acknowledge her remorse, the years of pain and betrayal had left scars that would never fully heal. The knowledge that they had been deceived didn't change the fact that I had been deeply hurt, and I wasn't in a place where I could simply forgive and move on. The betrayal from my own family had left me with a sense of distrust and resentment that felt insurmountable. I explained that I had spent years in therapy trying to come to terms with the trauma I had experienced and had worked hard to build a life for myself. A life that didn't depend on the approval or presence of those who had turned their backs on me. I was grateful for her apology and the acknowledgement of the truth, but I didn't feel compelled to rekindle a relationship that had been built on lies and betrayal. I had found peace by distancing myself from those who had caused me harm, and I didn't see the need to reopen old wounds in the name of reconciliation. While I believed in the power of forgiveness, it wasn't something I could offer at this time. I wished her well, but asked her to respect my decision not to reestablish contact. I needed to prioritize my emotional health and move forward, not backward. In the end, I asked Emily to pass this message on to the rest of the family and requested that they not reach out to me again. My focus had to be on my future, not my past. The responses from people online were overwhelmingly supportive. Many pointed out that I had been abandoned by my family at such a young age, just 16, and had to fend for myself. They expressed outrage at the way I had been treated and shared their own thoughts about how my family should be left behind, to live with the guilt of what they had done. Some even said they hoped the guilt would eat away at my father, knowing how he had failed to protect his own child. Others commented on how vile Mark's behavior was, and how unforgivable his actions were. Many expressed relief that I had chosen to move forward without letting them back into my life, understanding that sometimes cutting ties is the healthiest choice. She was sobbing uncontrollably when she first tried to explain what had happened. Her words were disjointed, and it was hard to understand her through the tears. After some time, I managed to calm her down enough for her to speak more clearly. That's when she told me that she had slept with another man the night before. She described how she had met him at a bar and approached him, striking up a conversation. They flirted casually at first, then began dancing together. She claimed that in her mind, it was just harmless fun, something light and inconsequential. She didn't expect anything more to happen, but according to her, the man charmed her into a kiss. One kiss turned into several, and things quickly spiraled out of control. At this point, she said she still thought it could stop there, but instead, she found herself asking him to walk her back to her hotel room. When they got there, they had sex, not once but multiple times. She stressed that the man wasn't forceful or aggressive. In fact, she said he was surprisingly respectful, stopping every time she asked him to. But after each break, she would get caught up in the moment again, and they would start up once more. This cycle of stopping and starting, she claims, went on for around 3 hours. Eventually, she asked him to stop for good, and that was when he left. She went on to tell me that the guy was about 10 years younger than her. When he noticed her wedding ring during their conversation and asked about it, she lied and told him she was going through a divorce. She admitted that she didn't know what had come over her, but confessed that part of the reason she acted that way was because she wanted to see if she could still attract someone younger. She said it started as a way to feel desirable again, but got carried away in a way she hadn't intended. We've been together for 14 years, married for 10, and we have a 7-year-old daughter. I'm devastated and angry. All I can think about is leaving her. She, on the other hand, has been begging me to stay, offering every possible solution to fix things. Marriage counseling, promising to never go out drinking again, even saying she'll give up any kind of social life. But I'm the type of person who gives one chance and only one. I couldn't hold back my rage, so I told her to go for self, and I've been ignoring her ever since. Since then, her friends and sister have started calling me, saying they had no idea she had gone home with someone. They saw her talking to him earlier in the night, but didn't think anything of it. I told them all to leave me alone. I also told my mom what happened, and her response left me even more confused. She said I should think about our family. She pointed out that my wife seems genuinely remorseful, that she didn't try to hide anything, and that she came clean to me right away. My mom even said it wasn't like my wife had been having an affair over a long period of time. This was, in her words, the best-case scenario, given what happened. After that conversation, I feel like I'm losing my grip on things. Am I wrong for refusing to consider forgiving her? I asked my wife to give me every detail of what happened. I needed to hear the full story, to see if she would slip up, change her version of events, or reveal more lies. She told me that when she first met the guy, they exchanged glances at the bar, and she initiated the conversation by asking him where he had come from. He seemed confused by the question, and she clarified, saying he was the first attractive man she had seen all night. That's how their conversation began. At some point, he noticed her wedding ring and asked her about it, which is when she lied and said she was getting a divorce. She said that after she told him that, he made a careless comment along the lines of, "Not like I care either way," and things escalated from there. I asked if she thought the guy might have slipped something into her drink, but she insisted that wasn't possible. They had done shots together, but she was certain she was in full control of her faculties. She also admitted that earlier in the night, she had done cocaine with her friends. That didn't shock me. It's fairly common in the UK party scene. What did surprise me was how deliberate her actions seemed despite everything. Her friends didn't know what was going on. She texted them to say she was tired and going back to the hotel to sleep. Since the hotel was just a few minutes away from the party, they didn't think anything of it. She was supposed to be sharing a room with her sister, but her sister was in another friend's room, drinking and doing drugs. My wife claimed she told the guy to leave around 6 a.m., as she thought her sister might return soon. I asked how many times they had sex, and she hesitated before saying 4 or 5 times. She explained that each session only lasted between 5 and 10 minutes. She admitted that initially, she had no intention of having full intercourse with him. She said she planned to give him oral sex and leave it at that. But the guy told her he couldn't finish that way, and after 20 minutes, she gave in and climbed on top of him. A few minutes in, she stopped, realizing how wrong it was, but then they would end up touching each other again after taking a break. This pattern repeated itself throughout the night. When I asked why she felt the need to test whether she could still attract someone, she broke down and admitted that turning 30 had affected her more than she thought. She said she had become obsessed with signs of aging, like wrinkles, and that it made her feel insecure. Meeting this younger guy made her feel youthful and attractive again, and she couldn't let go of that feeling. She also mentioned that at one point, the guy pointed out a younger woman at the bar who had a crush on him. He laughed about it, saying, "She's been watching us all night." My wife admitted that when the guy chose to focus on her rather than the younger girl, it boosted her ego to the point where she couldn't resist kissing him. After she told me everything, I asked her to leave the house for a few days to give me space to think. She didn't want to go, but I insisted. She's staying with her mother now while I try to figure out what to do. My mom, despite being furious with her, still thinks I should try to forgive her. My wife has been a huge support to my mom since my dad passed away last year. She spends time with her, takes care of her, and helps her not feel lonely. I know my mom isn't excusing her actions, but she loves my wife and just wants everything to be okay. Our daughter doesn't know what's going on. She was asleep when my wife came home and left again, and she'll likely think her mom is still on holiday. I have no idea what I'm going to do. My head is still spinning, and I'm trying to make sense of everything.